make sure that the podcast hosts, they take guests, because you don't want to be pitching a show that don't take guests. Make sure that you understand their audience, and you'll know this. It'll either say on their description or you'll get a sense of it on who's been a guest, as well as the website. And you want to make sure they're still relevant, that they're still publishing content, all these things, so that when you go to pitch, you know that it is something super specific. Hey, it's Renee. Welcome to the Into the Wild Show, the podcast for women who want to build incredible mental strength to level up their business and lifestyle. I'm Renee Warren, the founder of We Wild Women, author, speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, and your host. Together, we will make you unapologetic about shining your light, growing your business, and turning you into a wildly confident and successful leader. This is for you, the visionary, the go-getter, the entrepreneur, and for those that need a real kick in the butt to get going and to dream bigger. Each week, I bring in leading experts and entrepreneurs to help you take leaps in the right direction, because I know the best advice comes from someone who has successfully done it before. So, are you ready to level up? Welcome to Into the Wild. Hey, you wild women. Today, we are talking all about how to master the art of being a podcast guest and how to pitch yourself to be a podcast guest. And you might think, wow, this is really weird coming from you, Renee, as I know this is a service that you offer. And it is. However, one of the big programs that we have called the Authority Booster Intensive is a done with you program where we create your world-class PR strategy, your media kit, your pitch angles, we craft them for you. We craft your subject lines. We give you the media list. We do everything you need to prepare, and all you got to do is pitch. However, that was so easy for me to say, all you got to do. It's not necessarily that easy. And so if you are considering going on a podcast roadshow or just pitching a podcast to be a guest, by the way, this method works for things beyond just pitching for podcasting. I want to guide you through some simple tips and frameworks in order for you to be successful, because I know one of the most intimidating things is actually pitching yourself. So briefly, I want to introduce to you about why this is important. First of all, it is incredibly important for people to consider podcasting. There are, I don't know how many podcasts now in the world. There's millions of them, of which only a handful of them in comparison to how many are actually out there are live and active. I think there's like 300 or 400,000 that are active across so many different categories: business, parenting, thrillers, people that read children's books. There's everything you can possibly imagine. There is likely one or two for your industry, even if you're in the most obscure industry. It matters to use this method for marketing, especially in preparation for next year, because it gives you a chance. Get this. It gives you a chance to get in front of someone else's audience for the length of a podcast episode, which is typically about 30 to 42 minutes. And if these shows are hyper relevant and potentially your customers, that means that you get to talk about your expertise in front of these people for at least half an hour. That is incredible. On top of that, if you're a guest on a show, it typically means that the host likes you and that they find you credible. So it already breaks down the barrier to the listeners that you're an authority in the space. So what I mean by that is anytime I invite somebody to be on my show, I vet them very well. So my listeners trust that the guests that I bring on are good people and they are the experts in their space. And so, hey, if they're looking for somebody for SEO, if they're looking for somebody for content marketing, well, you know who to go to, because SEO is with Abby Osling and content marketing is with Aaron Trafford. These are guests that have been on my podcast, especially this month. It also allows you to create a relationship with the host. And why this matters for me is I've had well over 190 guests on my show, because there's some solo episodes in there as well. And most of these people have become acquaintances, if not friends, if not people that are referring me to their audience. I have built relationships with a lot of these guests, as well as me being on other people's shows. And they've invited me to come in to teach into their programs. They've become customers themselves, and they just highly regard me. So every week I get to have a conversation with somebody who is either a friend or a potentially new friend or a prospect or a client. That is such a beautiful thing about podcasting, of which I can't think of any other format that would allow me to do that. And lastly, of all the things that why podcasting matters is of the SEO benefits. If the podcast has a website or a transcript, your name and your content might be searchable. So when I pitch my clients to be on podcasts as a guest, we really hope that those authoritative podcasts are high ranking and that they put the client's full name in the heading. So go ahead and Google yourself or Google somebody that you respect. There's a very high likelihood some of the search hits in the first or second page of Google will result in them being a guest on somebody else's show. And it just gets better over time. Now, I want you to tune in to a recording from my friend Jen Pike, who describes why podcasting has helped her and her business and how she's leveraged it to gain the authority in her space. So tune into that now.
Having the opportunity to be a guest on other podcasts has been an absolute game changer for my company, for my brand awareness, for who I am and what I do out there in the world. It has created this incredible opportunity to get in front of audiences that I wouldn't otherwise have the chance to. It is not just a microphone, it is a megaphone for the message and the mission and the impact that you are trying to create and put out into the world. It has connected me with incredible, one-time colleagues who are now friends. And that has been this beautiful seed and this catalyst to then create other opportunities and other connections, get in front of different communities, and to actually really connect with my community and my avatar ideal client that is actually meant for the work that I do out in the world. If you are questioning and sitting on your hands about whether or not creating a podcast, pitching yourself for a podcast is the right answer, I am telling you, it is a 100% high five. Hell yes, it is.
The next thing is understanding your expertise. Podcasts are often centered around specific topics or industries that are attracting a target audience interested in just that niche. So when you're invited as a guest, it implies that you possess specialized knowledge and insights within that field. Because podcasts often allow for more in-depth discussions compared to other forms of media, like shorter interviews or maybe even written articles, it allows you to demonstrate your deep understanding of the subject matter, which ultimately leads to speaking engagements and consulting opportunities and more. So this is why when you are pitching yourself to be on podcasts, it's really important to find about 2, if no more than 3, different angles that you can be a guest. So say you're an author and you're launching a book and you want to get on a bunch of podcasts. It might not make the most sense for you to pitch the host or the producer of the podcast about you launching the book. Sometimes that just comes out of conversation. Maybe the angle would be about your expertise in your industry. And then when you're on this show, you can mention your book, or before you're recording, you can tell the host, hey, listen, I actually do have a book coming out and I would really love to talk about it at some point on the interview. Most of the time they'll say yes, right? Because there's a lot of effort that goes into writing a book. So we have to respect that of the author. So just because you're pitching it for one angle doesn't mean you can't talk about something else. Perfect example is a former client of mine, Amber. She had a book that came out in June, and it was all about mom and anxiety. And most of the podcasts that we pitched to were about parenting because it just made sense. However, there were numerous other podcasts that we pitched that were business focused. And so it wasn't so much the angle was about the book, it was about her expertise. And it was all about taming burnout. Really, it was about taming our addiction to burnout. And so in those shows, she was able to talk about her book. So understanding your expertise, jot down 1 to 2, 3 tops, areas or angles that you could use to pitch yourself. And then you use those angles dependent on the media or the podcast that you're pitching. Now, I want you to tune in to a little recording from my friend Jackie Service on how she's used podcasting to leverage her expertise. Jackie is an incredible friend of mine and a people strategist, and actually came through my Authority Booster Intensive program and has been executing on this program so brilliantly. She's seeing some incredible results. So listen in.
What is up? My name is Jackie Service, people strategist and founder of Serve Recruitment Agency. And podcasting has been a mass up-leveling in both my business and for me personally. There's a few ways that podcasting has really up-leveled who I am as a human and up-leveled the relationships that are in my life today. So let me walk you through a couple. Number one, being a podcast guest has really supported me personally in building deep, authentic relationships with other leaders and industry experts out there. Renee, big shout out to Renee, who helped me from a PR standpoint really pull together my podcasting list, allowed me and enabled me to create a podcast tour where I was on a significant amount of other shows and I was able to invite guests onto my show as well. So number one, building authentic relationships. Number two, because of those authentic relationships, there have been so many doors that have opened to partnership. When you build deep and authentic relationships, that is more individuals who know who you are and what you do in this world. And they have been sharing my message with people in their network. And so it has absolutely transferred into business results as well. And then number three, in today's world, visibility is the name of the game. And podcasting is a wonderful way to get access to other people's communities and be able to share your message more broadly in the world. So if you haven't already, highly recommend be a guest on other people's podcasts. If you host a show, invite them on, do a podcast swap, because a podcast tour will absolutely change both you as an individual and your business.
Okay, you wild thing, you can throw out that scruffy media pitch now. No more poring over bland pitches, wasting countless hours trying to piece your story together, wondering where to send it and who will even care. You know that landing media coverage is the number one way to claim your seat at the table, and you're savvy enough to know it's time to bring in an expert. That's why we've created a system to take the guessing game of PR off your plate. One day, one investment, all the value. Get your PR strategy in hand sooner with our VIP days. It's strategy over breakfast and PR ready by dinner. Picture this: a world-class PR strategy created for your business by an award-winning publicist with 12 plus years of industry experience, and not just an upgraded version of a dull media kit, but a custom plan that's strategically crafted to capture the attention of journalists and influencers. No fill-in-the-blank, bare-bone type templates. Just a detailed roadmap to move your brand forward without the agency price. And this isn't a course. Here's exactly what you'll walk away with. All of this custom media kit, pitch angles for podcast, print, and TV, curated podcast list of over 50 vetted shows, one press release, confidence to pitch at your own pace, custom training videos to show you the way, plus a month of follow-up support with me. If you want in to this amazing VIP day, simply go to wewildwomen.com/VIP day to either fill in the application if you're ready to do it or schedule a call if you want more. That's wewildwomen.com/VIP day. The next thing is creating the media list. This takes a lot of effort. Now, there's a lot of places out there that you can go and buy lists, and you can go and subscribe to expensive platforms. If you have the budget, by all means, go and do it. It's not for everybody. How we've created our media list over time was really it started with a Google Sheet, and it started by going on iTunes, searching up specific keywords and finding shows that were relevant to our clients or to me. Then going to their website and trying to find their email address or contact information. Today, we use a platform called Listen Notes, which is like a directory of all the podcasts out there. I think it's like the OG of the industry, but it allows us to find podcast information, typically their email address of who to pitch, their website, social media stuff, and some other details about the show. Now, in building out the media list, I want to urge you to do these in sequence of don't build the list, find the contacts, and pitch at the same time. It requires different brain power. So build the list. This is often an activity that is best served maybe in the afternoon or some other time when there's not too much thinking involved. And then make sure that the podcast hosts, they take guests, because you don't want to be pitching a show that don't take guests. Make sure that you understand their audience, and you'll know this. It'll either say on their description or you'll get a sense of it on who's been a guest. as well as the website. And you want to make sure they're still relevant, that they're still publishing content, all these things, so that when you go to pitch, you know that it is something super specific. So the media list, I would say start out by pitching 10. And if you do use a platform like Listen Notes, it gives you an idea of two factors. One is called the global rank, which is the overall global rank of the podcast compared to others. And then there's the listen score, which is kind of like based on the reviews and the feedback for those shows based on their RSS feed. And we see this pattern in the types of shows that are typically easier to pitch in the sense that they're more likely to take guests if they have a lower global rank and a lower listener score. And so I always say, if you've never done this before, start out by tackling the media list with shows that aren't your dream list. Like, you don't want to be pitching Gary Vee or Joe Rogan as an example if you've never done this before. You need to build up your own credibility. If you've never done it before, start with the easier wins. Start with the shows in your industry that are more open to taking guests that haven't done this before. It allows you to build up your credibility and your authority, but most importantly, it allows you to practice the art of podcasting. So next up is crafting your pitch. This could be arguably the most difficult part. There are so many elements of this, and I don't want to go into detail because there is a free resource at the bottom of my website. If you go to wewildwomen.com, scroll to the bottom, there's a free resource on some templates you can use to pitch. However, I talk about this all the time. The most important factors in crafting the ultimate pitch is a great subject line, a short pitch, which is less than 250 words, no attachments, some bullet points, and 1 or 2 links. Typically, your links are to your website and your social media account. Why this is important? I get so many pitches on a weekly basis to have people be a guest on my show. And while I love it, I would say 95% of those pitches are not great. And this is also personal preference, which means that all the media, all the hosts have a personal preference in terms of how to reach out. But because we get so many pitches at this point now, we actually have an application process because it's the easiest way for us to vet the guests. But when it comes to pitching, one of the first places I go to is social media. And why I do that is because as a host, my biggest metric, and we'll talk about why this doesn't matter with Aaron Trafford. However, on this day, the most important metric for some advertisers and for some people to understand the authority of a podcast is your download number. And so when I go to see a guest, if they don't have any social media presence, yet they are geniuses in their field, they would be up for consideration. However, if they're just getting new to this, they're just starting out and they do not have a decent social following, and I just don't see them very active on social, I don't really have anything to work with. There's no interviews with them and whatnot. And why social matters is I almost hate sharing this because I feel like such a hypocrite. As a host, I want to know that you're going to share this with your community, because what's important for me is providing value to my listeners, but also to expanding the reach of my show. That is kind of why people want to come on my show, is to expand their reach. And so it's twofold. And so if you don't have that social credibility, it is more difficult to pitch to be a guest. So yes, social media does matter. Go out, create content, share your value, share your expertise, and keep at it. Do it consistently, because that is leverage you need to pitch podcasts. Next up is preparing for the interview. This is kind of some things we don't really do because we're so excited about the pitch and the media list and getting it out there and getting yeses. And then all of a sudden you're scheduling yourself to be on a show and you're not prepared. Preparation is key. And that's why you need to build out a spreadsheet or a Google Doc that has a list of possible interview questions. If you come through our Authority Booster Intensive Day, we do this for you because part of our process is we interview you as an example to make sure you get the kinks out, but really to understand the in-depth questions that people should be asking you as a guest. One of the important things is what we do is we kind of lay out 2 to 3 different categories. One is life, personal. People love to talk about personal stuff. They want to know who you are, why you matter. Then there's the business side of things, or there's the industry side of things. And then maybe there's questions about a book or something you're launching. So I would come up with 5 to 6 very unique but specific questions. And then you put that into a Google Doc and then you practice. take your assistant or your husband or wife and you have somebody ask you these questions and you jot down key points. When a host sees that you're prepared with these questions, they're more confident in approaching the conversation because they know that you've prepared. And I want you to listen into right now, really quickly, my friend Ali Caffrey, who is an incredible operations person who also went through my Authority Booster intensive program. And she is home running her podcast tour. When she first started doing this, she had such intense fear of showing up because she wasn't prepared. And the more she did it, guess what? The better she got at it. So tune in to Ali's discovery on how to better prepare for a podcast interview.
Hey, what's up? Allison Caffrey here. I'm the founder of Operations Agency and the best-selling author of The Sabbatical Method, How to Leverage, Rest, and Grow Your Business. When I first started out in my business, I would get asked here and there to be on podcasts, and I would say yes, and I would get so nervous. I would be like, what am I going to talk about? And I would prepare endlessly and review all of their questions. And now I show up, I deliver really, really valuable information and connect with the host and their audience and really just show up and serve. And it wasn't always like that. I was always really, really nervous to get on shows. And only when I became really disciplined in the pursuit of what shows I really wanted to speak on and who I really wanted to connect with and really exercise that muscle, right? Be repetitive and be bold and daring and get on the shows and ask for the things that I wanted to ask for. It's led to just tremendous growth, not only in my business, but also in my authority and my credibility. I was able to work on how I talk about my solutions and how I present my core frameworks and things that I do inside of my business every single day. It gives the listeners a little bit of a window into who I am and how I actually serve, my personality and all those things. So if you're thinking about doing this in your business and really creating a system for how you actually get on podcasts or, how many shows you decide to guest on, I say jump on it and it's going to be life-changing for you.
All right. One thing so crucial about podcasting, now that we're at this point, is what to do during the interview. Well, there's etiquette. Most importantly, because the podcast is all audio, make sure you have a good mic. Not AirPods, nothing that is Bluetooth enabled mic. And here's why. You sound like you're in a tin can. All of my guests require a hardwired mic into their computer. It is the most important thing. Also, make sure that you have great internet. I always say show up 15 minutes early to make sure you're testing your internet. Use a speed test tool. It's a free speed test tool to test how fast your internet is. Make sure your mic's plugged in. And nowadays, a lot of podcast hosts are recording everything. And so they'll use this in social media and probably throw it up on YouTube. So make sure that you look good too, that you're presentable. Also, in preparing for the interview, reach out ahead of time to the host to make sure that they have everything that they need, that they're prepared for your show, because then it just shows how excited you are. And then the most important thing, though, is always practicing your talking points before you go on. Go over it. Maybe you're getting ready that day, putting your makeup in your hair, whatever it is that you're doing. Go over your talking points. And also backtracking to preparing is make sure that you've listened to at least 2 episodes of that show before you go on. And then during the interview, here is the secret nugget of podcasting. Before you record is your opportunity to really connect with the host. You probably get about 5 minutes, but use that time wisely. Ask them a couple questions about them. Try not to look nervous. I know sometimes it's hard, but look like you're really engaged and prepared, and make sure you have no other distractions around you. No cats or dogs that are going to run in, no kids that might come in. You have to be of the utmost professionalism during these sessions in order for the podcast host to not be discouraged by the fact that maybe there's some distractions, but they just know it's going to be a good conversation. I can't tell you how many times people have had doorbells ring, and I know we can't avoid that, but dogs barking, our kids coming in. There were a couple, only a handful, because we're better prepared now at preparing our guest. But there were times where we had guests that are like, oh, I'm so sorry, my son's home and I need to breastfeed him, or I don't know, a toddler's running around. I always let it happen, but then the whole episode just being a big distraction. So nowadays we just reschedule. And while rescheduling is also a huge inconvenience, it's better to reschedule and put yourself in a position to actually be prepared and completely intentional with these hosts than it is to have to deal with barking dogs and crying toddlers. Believe me, it's not worth the effort. And no, you can't do all the things and wear all the hats at the same time when someone is trying to interview you. So in terms of managing your nerves, It's just about showing up and understanding that by you not showing up in your highest self, by you not showing up to deliver the expertise and the value that you know you can bring, you're doing that audience a disservice. So make sure that you're in your optimal state. Find a time of day that works best. I have been on shows and had to record at 5 a.m. and I've been on shows that I had to record late at night. Let me tell you, it doesn't work. And if that means that I'm not going on shows in Australia or the UK, that's fine. I have bountiful opportunities in North America across 3 or 4 different time zones. That's okay. I know what times work for me. So next up is after the interview. It's really important that you follow up and you give gratitude. I know we have so many emails that come into our inbox and probably a ton of DMs, but let me tell you, the guests that follow up with me, whether it's a voice note in Instagram or an email or something quick somewhere to say, thank you so much. I'm so excited for when this goes live, means a lot to me because it shows me the promise that they'll very likely share the show on their social media accounts and that they're organized. That is so crucial for a host. And then really after the interview, you're saying thanks. Hey, maybe you want to send a card or something. I don't know. But just make sure that you are following up. And then you try to snag if you can from the host, is try to snag the potential publication date so that you can slide that into your calendar. Once the show goes live, the most important thing is that you share it. But let me tell you, sure, you can share and reshare the post that you're tagged in on Instagram or whatever. I do it and I'm a hypocrite saying this, but it is ultimately the laziest form of sharing. My guests receive a Dropbox link, which has all the social media assets they need to promote. The best guests are the ones that take those and promote it outside of just sharing what I've tagged them in. The best guests are the ones that share it multiple times. Why is this important? The host will be so happy, but also podcast hosts know other podcast hosts in which we talk and we recommend guests to each other. And so if there ever comes a time when your specific niche is needed, and because you were such a prepared and fine-tuned guest and you've been sharing the content a lot, we would definitely refer you to those other shows. A lot of this stuff is stuff you can do on your own 100%. When you first start out, it's really exciting. It's a lot of heavy lifting. However, once you get into the momentum, it can be a game changer for your business. One thing I do want you to promise me though, if you are going to go on a podcast roadshow or start pitching hosts to be a guest on their show, please give yourself and commit to at least 90 days, 90 days of pitching 5 to 10 podcasts a week, following up with 5 to 10 podcasts a week for 90 days. You will start to see what pitch works, what subject lines work, what actual podcast categories work for you. And then you'll get better and more confident at it. 90 days. Oh, and I want to leave you with one last quick tip. Be mindful of the day of the week and the time of year you're pitching. There are certain times of the year that are just not good. If you want to find out which days are not good for pitching, direct message me on Instagram. There are 4 weeks during the year that are called the dark days. So direct message me, Renee_Warren on Instagram, and I can tell you what days of the year are not good for pitching. Until next time, ladies, peace out. So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Into the Wild. To make this girl happy and to help reach other women who are dreaming of starting their business, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and everywhere you listen in. Also, if you want to find me in the wild, check me out on Instagram at Renee_Warren. That's RENEE_WARREN. And leaving you with one of my favorite tips of all time. The best advice you could ever receive is from someone who has successfully done it before you. Until next time, ladies, peace out.